Hey there, I'm Kevin Landucci from ApplyPass.com. Welcome to OfferTown, a show for engineers about how to get offers, get promoted, and get paid what we're worth. Today, my guest is software architect and super senior engineer and interviewer of hundreds of other engineers, Dima Korolev. In our conversation, Dima touches on why AI is overhyped and how unstructured thinking helps you pass interviews. But mainly, Dima zones way in on the difference between mid-level, senior level, and above the senior level engineering candidates, so you can learn how to avoid down levels and understand the game. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to introduce one of my favorite people in the world of technology, former Coder of the Month, former competitive programmer, formerly of Google and Microsoft. He's got 2 exits under his belt, but he'll tell you he only has 1.5. He's notoriously humble and notoriously intelligent. He's been a co-founder, a head of machine learning, and an architect for the last 3 or 4 years. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Dima Korolev.
Honored to be here. Thanks, Kevin.
If somebody asks you who you are, how would you sum it up in a tweet length? Who are you?
Like old tweet length or new tweet length?
Let's say I'm not a tweeter, but like a short little blit. Like, who are you?
I like technology, and I believe building stuff is both interesting and rewarding and helps the humanity progress. And I've slowly evolved from coding stuff myself to working with other people. But at heart, I still believe the better we structure our collective technological engineering thought, the better off we as a society become. So this gives me enough pleasure and drive, and that's what I do for a living. And for fun too.
Do you think AI helps humanity?
In the long run, yes, but we're still very early. So right now, the media is dominated by a couple singular hypes that I think are mostly hypes, and they will go away. Like, does blockchain benefit humanity? Yes. Do NFTs? No. Do ICOs? No. So same with AI. Language models eventually going to work out.
What about Chat GPT?
I don't think it shows how intelligent it can be. I think it's more along the lines of showing how we as a humankind used to overestimate the complexity of many tasks. It's not difficult to write and speak coherently. It does not solve many problems, but many it does. And yeah, eventually it's going to help us. But look, have you ever had a successful chat with Chat GPT that actually replaces a human, like a customer representative person or whatnot? I don't think it ever worked. It's a good replacement for search. So to me, it's like Google in the early years. You can crawl the web and present results in a way that helps you navigate and find stuff. Yes, but it's an amplifier, not a creator.
What about these recent layoffs at Google? Are people getting laid off because of the advances in AI?
No, I don't think they're connected at all. I think so. My firm belief is that the tech people got too spoiled because we thought the money flows are endless, and we lost touch with reality. In reality, financial systems have been bubbling up, and this bubble had to burst, which it did. And you can tell yourself a story that it's about the AI, it's about recession, it's about all other stuff, it's about geopolitical issues. The thing is, it's just cycles. And in the way I think the world after some layoffs have happened, I'm really sorry for the unfortunate people who got affected. But realistically, it's a more fair world because you can no longer sell a bullshit story that our company is one big family. People have to think past this point, which is, I think, a better equilibrium all in all.
We got too spoiled. Yeah, man.
Oh, as a society, absolutely.
Yeah.
2012 to 2017, 18 in the Bay Area was a strangely good time. It cannot possibly last.
So if anybody out there wants to get a job at Google through a coding competition, how is it done?
Well, that's super easy. If you go to competitions, they come to you.
Right. And is that when you wrote the patents that you made for them?
Yeah, apparently.
What were the patents that you made? They had to do with natural language processing, I think.
So yeah, before we had this AI hype that started a couple of years back, we had this thing called machine learning. And when I started, it was not called machine learning. It was called information extraction, information retrieval, all those mathematically sound terms. And specifically what it has to do with is you take the text, you look at the words there, you transform them somehow. Most often, you just don't care about the order of words. You just think about which words are present there, how often, sometimes which pairs of words, called bigrams. And then you try to reason whether the document belongs, let's say, to a certain category or not, based on what features, such as words or bigrams, are present there. And there are mathematical procedures that are fairly straightforward. You literally count things one way or the other, and then subtract one from another, and you get a result. If it's above 0, it's 1. If it's below 0, it's something else. And far before we had the hardware to do neural network training at scale, that was the approach that worked. And I was curious enough. I mean, as a competitive programmer, I know how to write code that operates with bits and numbers effectively. So naturally, I gravitated towards working with large volumes of data. And yeah, a couple of those ideas became patents.
What the company that you got acquired? That's you were one of the first engineers there. Which company was that?
There was NLP, Friendly Data. We had an amazing pitch. We could convert pre-Chat GPT. We were there a couple of years before.
This is a while ago, right? This is 2017, something like that?
Yeah, I think so. So you write a text with respect to what do you want to get from the database. It gets converted into a SQL query, and then eventually get the results. There's no shortage of these ideas on the market today because of Chat GPT. But our secret sauce was precision. Because like mathematically, if every single step has like a 99 or 95% chance of success, every non-trivial clause would have 4, 5, 6 steps. And Chat GPT is laggy, it hallucinates, it does crap.
Right.
So if you want precise results for analytics, it's just infeasible. And we did a thing that was actually, like, we built a thing that was actually usable. You could keep adding clauses, keep adding constraints, and it's still making sense to you. The results are still good and useful. You can use them for analytics later on, like dashboards and reports. You can look at the intermediate layer, the SQL query, so that you know exactly it doesn't bullshit you. That was fun.
Dima, you've worked with a lot of engineers at the mid-level, senior level, above senior level. How important is coding for mid, senior, and above senior?
Extremely important, because coding is probably the only, like, discounting breaking code of conduct explicitly. Coding is the biggest yes/no signal. So you have to check that box, period. Like, unless you're applying for a small startup that needs you for something other than coding, you have to learn. You have to know how to code, and you have to prove it to your interviewers.
For the most part, coding is a yes or no decision rather than a leveling decision.
Yeah.
Would you say? Yeah. Okay. So then,
it's not possible. It's not possible to apply for like a mid-level and get offered a staff level because you coded brilliantly. It's not where the bar raising is. But it's possible to apply for a staff level, fail coding at a mid-level, and get a hard no because this person cannot code. Yeah, coding itself. Like, if you're applying for a VP and you have 20 years of experience, you can openly say I did not code in 10 years. And if you write a for loop that finds a largest number in an array, you're good enough. That happens all the time.
But in the interview process to get the job offers that I want, from mid to senior to above senior, coding is mainly most important at mid, kind of important at senior, and less important at above senior.
Yes, that's a good summary.
Okay.
I would say that, look, let me summarize it slightly differently. I think if you manage to pass coding interviews well enough at the mid-level, you may well not need to improve at all coding-wise for the interviews for the rest of your life.
You could just keep on keeping on and keep on that boat, but you can't just keep on keeping on with system design interviewing and behavioral interviewing. You have to get better if you want to get to staff or principal. Okay, why does nobody know that? Why is leak code the only thing that people are obsessing over when they're trying to do these job searches? When they should say, all I need to do is get to this much because that's what my mid-level has been since then, and what I really need to do is do all this other stuff. Why aren't people doing that?
I mean, they are. Absolutely. They're doing this increasingly. We just, look, I think it's observation bias. Leak code is there. It's easy to send friends links to leak code problems. It's easy to solve them in the evening when you feel like you want to practice. It's easy to compare results. People talk about it. And admittedly, a lot of people who get rejected at job interviews. We live in an open world. There's Blind, there's Reddit, there's everything. So people sincerely, and I think correctly, believe that many times, most of the time they are rejected at interviews, is because they failed something formal, such as coding. They're not always right. A lot of times you think you get rejected because you didn't code well, but in fact, the two people didn't like you for what you said in other interviews. But people people gravitate towards believing it's the coding imperfections that got them rejected, and they feel the need to practice that. And like in a way, they're right. I mean, admittedly, coding is hard. I interview tons of people. Many of them still don't understand basic things, and it shows on the interview.
This is one of the things that you're famous for in my mind, is that you almost want to run the risk of antagonizing some interviewers to not like you if you can antagonize one of the interviewers to like fight to the death for you. Is this accurate?
I know this from facts from some of the big companies I worked for. So I don't think I should name the company, but statistically that is true. So I sincerely believe, and this talk happens all the time here and there. I sincerely believe that above certain levels, above the senior level, you have to break the rules. Like being the person who's effective at breaking the rules, at getting things done, is pretty much a job description, job requirement, and you have to show that in your interviews.
What's a practical way that I can show someone in an interview that?
I can tell you what a friend of mine said.
Yeah.
He said it was at the beginning of his consulting career. So he was working with multiple people, and he was getting gigs for himself, and I was helping him a bit. He's like, Dima, you are okay. You have to learn the skill of interrupting people, but just once during a 1 hour conversation. You have to make them feel interrupted, but in a way that they appreciate.
Can you say a little bit about how each level, you as the interviewer, how much you would expect the interview candidate to drive the conversation versus them just being more passive?
Let me echo the feedback that I got for myself many years ago. And I think I was technically a senior, or even slightly above back then, but it was the most valuable feedback of many years of my life. The feedback was, Dima, you don't leave enough room for applause. You got to say something, and you have to have a decent understanding of how what you say resonates with the other side. And you gotta pace, right? You gotta pace the conversation in a way that you're not just answering the question, you're telling a story, and the story has an ending, and the part where, like, if it's a movie, there's a part where characters stop talking and scary music plays. You gotta leave these sort of impressions on a conversation partner. And people who are like mid-level, not too senior yet, who in their minds they believe they want to jump over their head. Like, I can put myself back into the body of a mid-level engineer who's trying to get a senior offer. My natural instinct is to talk a lot. My natural instinct is to try to leave the impression of somebody who actually understands what I have just said and more. It's a special skill to learn, to say less, but to say more with less. And the way there is to try to say fewer words. And every single time you have that instinct to continue to explain yourself better, you just stop and say to yourself, okay, next time I'll phrase it from a different direction. But so far, let's digest, let's wait, let's have the other person listen to me carefully and ask a follow-up question. If I can inject a couple words, convincing them further to understand this, all good. If I cannot inject them, that's fine too. I'll do better next interview. I cannot convince this person that I'm awesome by talking more.
Totally. What about at the senior level versus the above senior level? How is that different for how much you expect out of them as an interviewer, just to drive the conversation or maybe influence you?
I never really thought of it formally, but I mean, I did. But every single time we try to write it down, I stop people. I tell them, look, if we want to make it a formal process, it's going to be worse for us, for the company, for the candidates. But fundamentally, if you're looking at interviewing people who are above the senior level, like when I interview people who are like staffs or principals for my team or for the team I'm going to be working with, I want to see them perform at the level that I would like to work with them as staffs or principals. And this comes with a certain level of ownership, delegation, high-level communication, shielding me from unnecessary details, giving me the most important piece of information up front, asking me the big questions and ignoring the details because I can trust them to handle it. You got to act as a person. Like if I'm let's say a VP interviewing you for a principal position, you got to act as a person who I personally would want to trust later on to own a department so that I don't have to go below you. I just ask you, you give me a TLDR, and we're good. And driving the conversation is one of the best ways to prove to me that you're capable of doing that. To answer your question from the beginning, I think with all the respect given, I think mid-level people on the job market are mostly of the same tribe. The set of requirements for them is mostly standard. I mean, of course, there are like front and back end data and stuff, but you can expect that they have the same skill set. Somewhere slightly above the senior level, the road forks. There are different archetypes of like staff engineers. I think there's a book about that. I think there are 6 or 7 of them. Like I don't want to go into categories, but that's where the interesting stuff starts. Because when a company is looking for an uber senior person, when a company is looking for a mid-level person, they know that this team needs 3-4 mid-level people to help do the work. When they're looking for a person above the senior level, the hiring manager, the interview loop, the committee, they are looking for a particular person with a particular skill set steered in the direction of what this company needs. Maybe more people management, maybe more architecture, maybe more tech leadership, maybe more mentoring of others, maybe more clearly saying no, maybe more evangelism. And you gotta somehow do your research. I talk to people before the interview loop and show the sides that this company needs from you at this level, at this particular position. So it's not about the level alone. It's about how you fit.
What's something that you notice that people do in behavioral interviews that could be a common reason for getting down-leveled or rejected? Like one or two common reasons.
If you want me to say something that just came up to my mind first, like off my tongue, it's they're too polished. They are too polished. They're trying to check all the boxes. They're trying to be too standard instead of showing their true self. This I never understood. I mean, if you're looking for a high level position, presumably you're well established. Your career is doing fine. If I'm interviewing you and you're just looking for an uber senior role, I have to be selling you the role, not vice versa. And for me to sell you the role, you need to show me what you're passionate about. And then I'll tell you, hey, you know what? If only you could do this and not that, we could make a deal here. Or I can recommend you to another team in my company that needs your skill set. I don't need this cookie cutter. I need a person who fits this environment well, and I want them to fit well, not just get an offer.
So when they say the situation was, and the task was, and the action was, and the result was, you're just like crumbling in your chair. That's what I'm hearing.
That's an understatement. Like that's when I have a strong desire. If it's a video call, it's when I have a strong desire to open something else and read it.
Take a hard left and give a few tricks to the people that are out there that are just trying to get job offers. I've heard you say before, one trick in an interview, instead of saying API and all this stuff in an interview, you can just say contract. That'll make you sound very fancy as a candidate. Is that true?
Yep. I do it all the time. So
contract. What does the contract represent? It's a combination of things. It's the API. It's the.
It shows that you don't think in formal language, but rather in terms of how teams communicate. So a lot of times, a lot of things are left unwritten, unspoken, especially at the early stages. Once the doc is finalized, it's going to be formal. It's going to be precise. But when you're just getting to know each other like as a team, which again shows in the interview, right? You're making assumptions about what guarantees can my side offer you. And I'm making assumptions about what things can you take care of behind the scenes, so I don't need to worry about that. The word contract assumes we understand this implicitly and we verbalize that. The word API just says, here's my formal checklist, I'm going to do that. I need to understand what do you do behind the scenes. And you got to tell me in a few words, enough for me to understand this better. Ideally, instinctively.
All your stuff comes back to teaching people how to be unstructured. Do a mock interview with Dima, and what he tells me is like, throw the playbook away.
Look, the truth is, the SD interview is not really about designing a system. And I think it's increasingly clear to everybody over the past few years. Drawing the boxes and lines between them, it's just a way to start the conversation. But the objective of the interview is not for your boxes to be connected with proper lines. The objective is to get into the details of what you know, what you do not know, what you have used, what are the issues there, and would you not make production mistakes? would you not suggest stupid things? That's pretty much it. We can
Yeah,
set the stage for 20 minutes in the boxes, and then I'll pick on one box, and we spend 20 more minutes talking about that box. And that's okay for a high-level conversation.
Yeah.
You ask for a few pieces of advice. One thing that people often miss is that you got to read your interviewer, and there are certain classes of questions they expect from you. Some interviewers are product interviewers. You got to ask them questions. Hey, what would the user see? If you design the system incorrectly, if you consciously make mistakes to launch it faster or cheaper, it's going to be imperfect. In which ways? Is it acceptable? Is it a good trade-off for the company to launch faster, even though some users would complain? Other people think of like team spirit. How would your team like or not like you if you do it this way? If you can read your interviewer, that's an amazing important skill, and playbooks don't teach that.
Yeah, and some companies are going to have those leanings too, like product companies like Uber or Lyft. Would love to hear you talk about a difference between something that you make in the app, because it would change how it looks for the passengers and how they might like that during surge pricing or something, just because they might like that in the UI. Like you can get away with basically doing that for a long time.
You can literally talk to an Uber interviewer that, hey, I waited for the car for the next 10 minutes yesterday because they didn't realize it's like a one-way street and there's no U-turn, and you have an idea how to fix it. And for a senior level interview, this alone would be a huge booster. You can totally wreck your code, but talking about this would give you a huge booster. At the same time, in Asia, where Grab runs the show, they show you that the driver is waiting on a red light because people don't like seeing the dots stopped. And that's an amazing feature that somehow Uber itself never bothered to build.
Dima, welcome to the Lord of Hiring. So this game involves a little bit of imagination where you are the Lord of Hiring. Dear Lord of Hiring, the tech industry, I hereby improve you by blank.
I don't know, man. Put some put something to keep people like open up and relax and show their true selves, as opposed to trying to be strict and stringent and formal.
Yeah, they need some hats, I think. I've heard of hats before.
Hats.
Okay, 2 more. Lord of Hiring, interviewers need your help. Interviewers, from now on, you will blank.
That's the one I have a formal answer to. Pair up and shuffle often, so you can compare notes. Like 2 interviewers interview the candidate, one leads, one follows. They can always take turns. If they're senior enough, they don't need to agree beforehand. And then after 100 interviews have happened and you've paired up with 10 different pairs, you can analyze the numbers and crunch them and talk to your favorite recruiters about the candidate experience too. That does miracles.
Geniuses.
That's what hats do.
All right. Dear Lord of Hiring, you say, candidates, from now on, you will blank.
I'm tempted to have this do with offers. Like you're guaranteed to receive formal offers within, let's say, 24 hours after the interview and stuff like that. That would be super awesome for the
Wow,
user.
that would be so cool. This game is called The Hiring Deck of Hootenanny. What's the zaniest thing you've ever heard a candidate say or do in an interview? Mock interviews count.
Twice in my life I saw candidates smoke.
Like an e-cigarette or like a cigarette?
Once it was an e-cigarette and they asked, and the other one it was like a proper cigarette. And word on the street is recruiters have secret channels across companies to ban those candidates.
What's the wackiest interview feedback or rejection reason you can remember hearing?
Oh yeah, there was a really horrible example once. I think they had to delete it. It had to do with like this candidate laughs hysterically, and I don't think they would be a good fit for the team.
Because that's me. Are you describing me?
That's dude.
Are you describing me?
No.
I feel triggered. What's the craziest story you've ever heard about onboarding?
Can't think of much. The craziest story was when I was onboarding once. I had a first time. My manager was a first time manager. Yeah. We didn't like each other, and I escalated this. I was a junior. I mean, I was a senior, but quite junior still. And the argument. So I tried to isolate the shortest possible argument to take to court, as in the higher level person. And the argument I found disagreeing with this person was that he said onboarding is not supposed to be fun. You got to work hard. And my point was, I'm working hard, but if you not want to make it fun for me, I'm not going to work under you. I changed managers. I guess I was too happy, and they were expecting their pressure to work the other way.
I love that. I love that for you. I'm the same way, and I laugh hysterically.
Oh. There's next two of us.
What's the fastest tank you've ever seen in an interview? Like instant rejection. Candidate does something, and then you're like, "Wow, no."
In SD, I had a couple of examples when they just suggest something totally stupid. Like they literally suggested an idea that cannot possibly work. It would stall the whole system for every single user for seconds long. And we're like, hey, so you're suggesting this seriously, right? Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good pattern to use. Forget it.
What's the wildest disagreement you've seen or heard about a candidate? What sparked it?
We had a hiring committee chat when more than one person who is in the higher ups were in favor of rejecting the candidate because they saw their presentation as lying. And the line was that they didn't quite disclose that they're no longer working at certain places.
Because they didn't say that they weren't working at the last job that said on their resume?
Yeah, I think with this particular person, since we're not naming names, I think they just got laid off like 2 months before. And they downplayed it as I didn't update my resume, and I still my PDF still shows him there, and I'm no longer there as of today. Like to me, it's good enough.
That's fine to me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but then
that's like a normal thing. What's something you believe about hiring and recruiting, but don't have the data to prove?
That skill matters less than ambition.
Typically, just micro and true. I love it. Another one. What in hiring doesn't matter as much as it seems? You can say hiring or interviewing.
Processes. When the bigger the company, the more formal the process, and like the fact that there are many steps until you finally get an email, like you as a candidate get an email from the recruiter, is absurd. Like it can literally be the case that you passed all the interviews, and then organic process, if you don't push it, takes like 3 weeks until they finally talk about you. And then you WhatsApp the recruiter saying that they have a counter offer, and it's exploding, and then things happen within 3 hours. So we all know it works like this. It's totally broken, and nobody bothers to fix it.
Last one. What's an unconventional opinion that you feel strongly about, aka Dima Korolev? What hill would you die on?
With respect to, I got plenty.
You got to die on one, dude. Or two, but like only a few.
Like in the modern day of AI, tons of analytics, tons of generative stuff. Like I just don't see myself doing that because I don't see any value there except the hype that I just don't like.
It's the ritual here at Offertown is, well, you're the guest, so you do the sign up.
10 years from now, there will be no resumes, interviews, recruiters. There will be Kevin who's telling people how to do things right and people listening. How about that?